Right now, in this exact moment, there's something ancient awakening inside you.
A knowing that transcends the limitations of modern medicine.
Right now, in this exact moment, there's something ancient awakening inside you.
What if everything you've been taught about healing is backwards?
What if your body isn't a broken machine waiting for external fixes,
but a quantum field of infinite intelligence, just waiting for you to remember how to activate it?
You're here because something deeper is calling. That voice inside that whispers there's more to your existence than symptom management and prescription bottles. That intuitive knowing that your body holds secrets far more profound than any laboratory could ever manufacture. The ancient mystery schools understood something that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. Your physical form is not separate from the universe. You are a living hologram of cosmic intelligence. Every cell in your body vibrates with the same frequencies that govern stars, planets, and galaxies. When you exist in alignment with these frequencies, disease cannot take root. When you fall out of harmony, illness emerges not as an enemy, but as a messenger. The Egyptian masters called this universal architect Thoth. The Greeks knew him as Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great. His teachings, encoded in the Emerald Tablet, reveal a law that shatters conventional understanding. As above, so below. This is not mystical poetry. This is quantum instruction. Your body mirrors the cosmos. Your internal chemistry reflects universal patterns. When you understand this connection, you unlock healing powers that make pharmaceutical interventions look primitive. But here's what they don't want you to discover. Inside you right now, dormant and waiting, are three fundamental forces. Three primordial elements that hold the key to spontaneous regeneration, complete vitality, and sovereign health. These aren't substances you swallow or inject. These are living principles woven into your very existence. When activated and aligned, they create a resonance so powerful that illness dissolves at its quantum root. The gatekeepers of conventional medicine have built empires on your forgetting. Every time you hand over your power to an external authority, every time you believe healing comes from outside rather than within, you strengthen systems designed to keep you dependent. The pharmaceutical industry doesn't profit from your wellness. It profits from your return visits, your chronic conditions, your belief that you are powerless without their interventions. In the 1500s, a renegade physician named Paracelsus shattered the medical establishment of his time. He burned the traditional medical texts in public squares. He declared that the greatest healer resides within the patient, not the doctor. He mapped three fundamental principles, three primordial forces that govern all healing: salt, sulfur, and mercury. But these weren't chemical compounds from an apothecary. These were metaphysical keys to unlock your body's hidden architecture. The church condemned him. The medical guilds tried to destroy him. Why? Because his teachings placed healing authority back in your hands. If you possess the blueprint for self-regeneration, you no longer need their institutions. You become dangerous to systems built on your dependence. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you've been conditioned to believe. This journey requires courage. It demands that you release old stories about victimhood and powerlessness. It asks you to step into a radical new understanding that you are not a passive recipient of health or disease. You are an active creator, a conscious alchemist capable of transmuting suffering into vitality. But before we go deeper, I need you to engage. Not passively consume, but actively participate. Drop a comment right now. Write these words: I remember my power. This isn't just interaction, this is activation. When you declare your intention to the quantum field, you send ripples through the fabric of possibility. You signal to your subconscious mind that you're ready for transformation. The three elements we're about to explore operate on principles that quantum physics now validates. Your consciousness directly influences matter. The observer effect demonstrates that the act of attention collapses wave functions into specific realities. Your body, being matter and energy simultaneously, responds to the quality of your awareness. When you exist in fear, fragmentation, and disconnection, your cells mirror that chaos. When you shift into coherence, presence, and wholeness, your biology recalibrates toward health. This is not metaphor. This is mechanism. Your thoughts broadcast frequencies, your emotions generate electromagnetic signatures, your beliefs create biochemical cascades. You are a walking, breathing transmitter, constantly communicating with the quantum field. The question is, are you broadcasting from unconscious programming or conscious intention? Most humans walk through life on autopilot. They inherited belief systems from parents, culture, and media without questioning. They adopted identities formed in childhood trauma without examination. They carry emotional wounds like badges of honor without healing. All of this unprocessed material crystallizes within your energy field, creating distortions that eventually manifest as physical disease. Your body is not betraying you when illness emerges. Your body is speaking to you. Disease is a downstream effect of upstream causes: energetic misalignment, emotional suppression, spiritual disconnection. These invisible factors create tangible physical symptoms. Modern medicine treats symptoms while ignoring root causes. It's like mopping the floor while the faucet still runs. You might achieve temporary relief, but the underlying problem remains. The Hermetic tradition teaches that true healing happens through transmutation. You don't fight disease, you transform the conditions that allowed disease to manifest. You don't suppress symptoms, you decode the messages they carry. You don't medicate pain, you metabolize the experiences that created pain. This requires a complete paradigm shift, from victim to creator, from powerless to sovereign, from dependent to autonomous. The three elements of Thoth provide the roadmap for this transformation, but I must warn you, this path is not for those seeking quick fixes or easy answers. This path demands everything: your willingness to face your shadow, your courage to sit in discomfort, your commitment to radical self-honesty. The first element, salt, represents your physical body, the dense material that anchors your consciousness in three-dimensional reality. But salt is more than flesh and bone. Salt is memory. Every experience you've ever had lives encoded in your tissues. Every trauma you've survived is stored in your fascia. Every emotion you've suppressed crystallizes in your cellular structure. When these memories remain unprocessed, they create rigidity, calcification, stagnation. Your life force cannot flow freely through crystallized channels. Healing begins with dissolving these ancient patterns, releasing the grip of the past, creating space for new possibilities to emerge. But how do you release what you cannot see? How do you dissolve patterns formed before you had language to name them? This is where ancient wisdom meets modern understanding. The technology for energetic cleansing has existed for thousands of years, hidden in plain sight, dismissed as superstition by rational minds, yet profoundly effective for those willing to practice. The second element, sulfur, represents your soul, your passion, your purpose, your will to live and create. Sulfur is fire, the animating force that moves you forward. When balanced, sulfur manifests as inspired action, creative expression, and aligned desire. When imbalanced, sulfur becomes addiction, compulsion, and destructive rage. How many people do you know who are slowly dying inside, going through the motions of life without real passion, trading authentic desire for societal approval, suppressing their creative fire to fit in, to be safe, to avoid rejection? This suppression of sulfur creates a different kind of illness: depression, anxiety, a sense of meaninglessness that no antidepressant can touch. Healing sulfur means reclaiming your authentic passion, discovering what makes you feel truly alive, directing your fire toward purposes that serve your evolution rather than patterns that destroy you. This is not selfish. This is essential. When you burn with authentic purpose, you illuminate the path for others. The third element, Mercury, represents spirit, the bridge between heaven and earth, between consciousness and form. Mercury is volatile, ever-changing, impossible to grasp. It is the breath that moves through all things, the intelligence that animates matter, the awareness that observes experience. Most humans identify completely with the content of their experience. They believe they are their thoughts, their emotions, their circumstances. But you are not the waves. You are the ocean. You are not the weather. You are the sky. Mercury awakens this recognition that beneath all changing phenomena exists an unchanging awareness. a witness consciousness that remains untouched by the drama of life. When you activate these three elements and bring them into harmonious alignment, something miraculous happens. The alchemical marriage, the sacred union of body, soul, and spirit. In this state of integration, you become whole, not perfect, but complete, not invulnerable, but resilient, not separate from life, but intimately woven into its fabric. This is what the ancients called the philosopher's stone, not literal gold, but something far more valuable. The capacity for continuous self-correction, the ability to maintain equilibrium regardless of external circumstances, the embodiment of sovereign health that needs no external validation or intervention. But getting there requires passing through stages that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The first stage is the darkest, the most challenging, the most necessary. It's called Nigredo, the blackening, the descent into your personal underworld, where all your shadow material waits to be witnessed, felt, and integrated. You cannot skip this stage. You cannot bypass the darkness. Every attempt to transcend without first descending creates fragile spirituality, temporary awakening built on unstable foundations. The darkness is not punishment. The darkness is preparation. It's the crucible where false identities burn away, revealing the gold of your authentic self beneath. Are you ready to descend, to face what you've been running from, to feel what you've been numbing? The doorway to complete healing stands before you, but it only opens from the inside, and it requires something most people are unwilling to give: total honesty, complete surrender, absolute commitment to truth. What you'll discover on the other side makes every moment of discomfort worth it. A vitality you've never known, a clarity that cuts through illusion, a power that nothing external can diminish. This is your birthright. This is what you came here to remember. Stay with me as we go deeper into the mystery. The journey into authentic healing doesn't begin with affirmations or positive thinking. It begins with descent, with facing the accumulated weight of everything you've been carrying. The ancient alchemists knew this truth. Before transformation comes dissolution. Before rebirth comes death. Before the light can emerge, you must first navigate the darkness. This stage is called Nigredo, the blackening, the dark night of the soul. Every spiritual tradition acknowledges this necessary passage: the wilderness years, the valley of shadows, the cocoon stage, where the caterpillar completely dissolves before becoming something new. You cannot rush this process. You cannot skip ahead to the comfortable parts. The darkness has medicine that light cannot provide. What exactly is dissolving during Nigredo? The false self, the identity you constructed to survive a world that couldn't hold your authentic expression, the masks you learned to wear to gain approval, avoid punishment, and maintain connection, the stories you told yourself about who you are and what's possible. All of these protective mechanisms that once served you now prevent your evolution. Your body has been keeping score since day one. Every moment of unprocessed trauma, every swallowed emotion, every unsaid truth has been stored in your tissues. Your fascia holds the memory of every time you braced against pain. Your nervous system carries the signature of every threat you faced. Your cells remember betrayals that your conscious mind has long forgotten. This crystallized material creates what alchemists call contaminated salt. Your physical body becomes dense with unmetabolized experience, heavy with the weight of the unlived life, rigid with protective patterns that no longer serve. This contamination is the root cause of most chronic illness, not bacteria, not viruses, not genetic inevitability, but unprocessed life experience calcifying into physical symptoms. Modern medicine has no framework for this understanding. It cannot measure emotional suppression on a blood test. It cannot see trauma patterns on an X-ray. It treats the body as a complicated machine with interchangeable parts, completely missing the energetic and emotional dimensions where disease actually originates. But you know better. You've felt it, that sense that your symptoms are trying to tell you something, that your pain carries meaning beyond random biological malfunction. Your intuition is correct. Your body is not betraying you. Your body is speaking to you in the only language it knows: physical sensation. Entering Nigredo requires tremendous courage, because it means stopping the running, ceasing the distractions, turning toward what you've been avoiding. Most people will do anything to escape this confrontation. They medicate, they numb, they stay perpetually busy, they spiritually bypass, using positive thinking and gratitude practices to plaster over wounds that need to be opened and cleaned. But avoidance always costs more than confrontation. The shadow material you refuse to face doesn't disappear. It festers, it grows, it eventually manifests with enough intensity that you can no longer ignore it. Crisis becomes the universe's way of forcing the descent you've been resisting. What if you could choose the descent consciously? What if you could enter the darkness with intention rather than being dragged there by circumstance? This is the path of the conscious alchemist. You don't wait for rock bottom. You voluntarily go to the bottom to retrieve the gold buried there. The first element, salt, must be purified, and the purification process is both literal and metaphorical. On the physical level, ancient traditions have used a simple yet profoundly effective tool. Salt water, the ritual bath. Immersion in the ocean or in water mixed with coarse salt creates energetic cleansing that modern showers cannot replicate. Water is the universal solvent. It dissolves, it cleanses, it carries away what no longer serves. Salt is the purifying agent. It neutralizes negative energy, draws out toxins, creates a protective field. When combined with conscious intention, a simple salt bath becomes an alchemical ritual. You're not just cleaning your skin, you're performing karmic detoxification. The science supports what mystics have known for millennia. Your body generates an electromagnetic field that extends beyond your physical boundaries. This biofield carries information, emotional signatures, and energetic imprints. When you've been in stressful environments or challenging interactions, your field becomes cluttered with incoherent frequencies. Salt water helps discharge these accumulated energies. The ions interact with your biofield, creating balance and coherence. Ancient cultures understood this intuitively. That's why ritual bathing has been central to spiritual practice across every tradition. From the mikvah in Judaism to the purification rites in Shinto, from the baptism waters of Christianity to the sacred rivers of Hinduism. But the external ritual must be matched by internal work. The real purification happens when you're willing to feel what you've been avoiding, to sit with the grief you've been outrunning, to acknowledge the anger you've been suppressing, to witness the fear that's been driving your choices unconsciously. This emotional alchemy is where most people get stuck. They want healing without feeling. They want transformation without discomfort. They want to skip the dark night and go straight to the enlightenment. But that's not how consciousness evolves. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You cannot integrate what you won't acknowledge. Negredo strips away everything false until only truth remains. It's uncomfortable. It's disorienting. It feels like dying because, in a sense, you are dying. The version of you that needed to stay small, to play safe, to maintain the status quo must die for a new version to emerge. A version that's authentic, empowered, and aligned with soul purpose. During this dissolution phase, you might experience what feels like a crisis. Relationships that no longer reflect your truth fall away. Career paths that were built on shoulds rather than authentic desire begin to crumble. Belief systems that you inherited without questioning start to reveal their limitations. This falling apart is not failure. This is making space. Nature shows us this pattern everywhere. The forest fire that seems destructive actually fertilizes the soil for new growth. The snake must shed its skin to expand. The seed must break open in darkness before it can push toward light. You are not exempt from these natural laws. You are subject to them. And when you align with them rather than resist them, the process becomes far less painful. There's a specific practice that supports the Negredo phase: stillness, silence, solitude, the dark moon phase, where you withdraw from external stimulation and turn completely inward. In our hyper-connected world, this might be the most countercultural act possible: to voluntarily disconnect, to sit in silence, to be alone with yourself without distraction. Most people are terrified of silence, because in silence, they hear the voices they've been drowning out. The inner critic, the wounded child, the part that knows they've been living someone else's dream. But these voices don't want to hurt you. They want to be heard. They carry information essential for your healing. The dark moon phase is not depression, though it might feel similar. Depression is a collapse into darkness with no sense of meaning or purpose. The dark moon phase is a conscious descent with the understanding that this temporary dissolution serves your evolution. One leaves you feeling hopeless. The other, while uncomfortable, carries a sense of sacred purpose. During this time, your only job is to witness, to observe without judgment, to allow without resistance. You're not trying to fix anything or change anything. You're simply creating space for what is to be fully acknowledged. This might seem passive, but it's actually the most active spiritual work you'll ever do. When you can sit with discomfort without reaching for distraction, something profound shifts. You discover that you are larger than any emotion you feel, stronger than any pain you experience, more resilient than any story you've been telling yourself. The darkness reveals your true capacity, which is infinite. This is where salt becomes purified, not through force or effort, but through surrender and acceptance. The crystallized patterns begin to dissolve, the rigidity softens, the density lightens. You're releasing cellular memory that may have been stored for decades, ancestral patterns that have been passed down through generations, collective wounds that extend far beyond your individual experience. As the salt purifies, you might experience physical symptoms, old injuries flaring up, unusual fatigue, emotional volatility. This is not a sign that something is wrong. This is evidence that something is being released. Your body is finally metabolizing what it couldn't process when the original wounding occurred. Support your body during this phase. Rest more than usual. Drink clean water. Eat simple, nourishing foods. Move gently. Spend time in nature. These aren't luxuries. These are necessities. You're doing deep work, even when it looks like you're doing nothing. Honor the process. The purification of salt creates a stable foundation, but foundation alone doesn't create movement. It doesn't generate change. It doesn't propel you toward your purpose. For that, you need the second element, sulfur, the fire that transforms stillness into action, potential into manifestation, dreams into reality. But sulfur is volatile, dangerous when uncontained, destructive when misdirected. Before you can safely work with this powerful force, you must have a purified vessel. This is why salt comes first, why the foundation must be solid before you can handle the heat. Many people skip this step. They try to work with fire before they've cleared the debris, and they burn themselves in the process. Have you been moving through life on autopilot? Following paths that others chose for you, suppressing your authentic desires to maintain peace or approval? Then sulfur activation might feel revolutionary, even threatening, because when you reconnect with your true passion, everything that's not aligned becomes unbearable. The awakening of sulfur is the transition from the black work to the white work, from nigredo to albedo, from darkness to dawn, from dissolution to reformation. But this transition doesn't happen automatically. It requires intention. It requires action. It requires you to take the purified salt and ignite it with purpose. What is your purpose? Not the answer that sounds good, not what you think you should say, but the truth that lives in your bones, the knowing that whispers in quiet moments, the dream you've been too afraid to speak out loud. That's your sulfur calling, and it's time to answer. From the depths of dissolution, a new force begins to stir, something that's been dormant, suppressed, or misdirected for far too long. This is sulfur, the second forbidden element, the fire that animates your existence, the passion that gives meaning to your days, the sacred desire that pulls you toward your destiny. Sulfur is not just motivation or enthusiasm, it's the life force itself, the essential energy that separates existence from mere survival. When sulfur flows freely and clearly, you feel alive, purposeful, engaged with the world in a meaningful way. When sulfur is blocked, misdirected, or contaminated, you feel dead inside, going through motions without real connection, existing without truly living. Look around at the world. How many people do you see who have lost their fire, who wake up exhausted despite hours of sleep, who accomplish tasks without satisfaction, who have everything they thought they wanted yet feel empty inside? This is the epidemic of disconnected sulfur, of life force that has nowhere meaningful to flow. Modern society systematically disconnects people from their authentic sulfur. From childhood, you're taught to suppress desires that don't fit the mold, to pursue careers that provide security rather than fulfillment, to measure success by external markers rather than internal alignment. The result is a population of high-functioning zombies, successful in the eyes of the world, dying on the inside. Sulfur in its pure form is your soul made visible, your unique contribution to the world, the thing only you can offer in exactly the way you offer it. But most people never discover their authentic sulfur because they're too busy performing someone else's script, living someone else's dream, pursuing someone else's definition of worthy life. The awakening of sulfur often begins with crisis, with the sudden recognition that the life you've been building doesn't actually belong to you, that the goals you've been chasing were programmed rather than chosen, that the person you've become is a careful construction rather than authentic expression. This recognition can be devastating. Everything you've worked for suddenly feels meaningless. Relationships built on false foundations begin to shake. Career success that brought pride now brings emptiness. This is the holy crisis, the necessary disruption that cracks open the shell you've been living inside. But crisis alone doesn't purify sulfur. Many people experience the recognition that something is wrong without making meaningful changes. They numb the discomfort. They rationalize staying in situations that slowly kill them. They tell themselves it's not that bad, or it could be worse, or change is too risky. And the fire continues to burn destructively inward rather than constructively outward. Purifying sulfur requires something fierce, honesty that cuts through every excuse, courage that acts despite fear, commitment that doesn't waver when difficulty arises. You must be willing to disappoint people, to disrupt comfortable arrangements, to risk security for the sake of authenticity. This is where most people falter. They want transformation without consequence. They want to honor their authentic desires without upsetting anyone. But you cannot serve two masters. You cannot live from your soul and from social conditioning simultaneously. Eventually, you must choose. The alchemical stage associated with sulfur purification is albedo, the whitening, the emergence of clarity. In Negredo, everything was dark, confusing, dissolving. In albedo, light begins to break through. You start to see with new eyes, to understand with new awareness. The fog lifts, revealing the landscape of your authentic path. Albedo is not permanent enlightenment. It's the dawn, not the full sun. It's the first glimpse of truth, not complete understanding. But that glimpse changes everything, because once you see clearly, even for a moment, you cannot fully return to unconsciousness. The spell is broken, the veil is pulled back. You know there's more. In this stage, you begin to recognize the difference between authentic desire and conditioned craving. Authentic desire arises from your soul. It feels aligned, even when it's challenging. It energizes you. It pulls you forward with a sense of rightness. Conditioned craving arises from wounds. It feels compulsive. It drains you. It promises fulfillment but delivers emptiness. Most addictions are misdirected sulfur, fire that's been channeled into destructive patterns because it had no constructive outlet. The alcoholic isn't weak-willed. They're disconnected from authentic passion. The workaholic isn't ambitious. They're running from emptiness. The compulsive consumer isn't materialistic. They're trying to fill a void that only purpose can satisfy. When you redirect sulfur toward authentic expression, the compulsions naturally fade, not through willpower or suppression, but through replacement. Why would you need the cheap substitute when you have access to the real thing? Why would you numb yourself when you're finally feeling alive? This redirection requires consciousness. You must become aware of your patterns. Notice when you're acting from wound rather than wisdom. Catch yourself reaching for the familiar numbing strategy, and then make a different choice. Not once, but repeatedly, until new neural pathways form, until new habits become automatic. The practice of redirecting sulfur is what spiritual traditions call discipline. But discipline has been misunderstood. It's not punishment. It's not forcing yourself to do things you hate. Discipline is the conscious channeling of your life force toward what truly matters. It's saying no to what depletes you so you can say yes to what fulfills you. Think of sulfur like a river. When a river flows freely within its banks, it nourishes everything around it. It provides life, creates beauty, sustains ecosystems. But when a river floods, breaking through barriers without direction, it destroys. The same water that gives life takes life depending on whether it's channeled or chaotic. Your passion works the same way. When directed consciously toward purposes that align with your values and gifts, it creates beauty and meaning. When allowed to flood unconsciously into addictions and compulsions, it destroys your health, relationships, and potential. The energy isn't the problem, the channel is the problem. Purifying sulfur means creating clear channels, strong banks that contain and direct your fire. This happens through practice, through ritual, through commitment. You establish non-negotiable boundaries around what matters most. You protect time for creative expression. You honor your gifts by developing them rather than dismissing them. In ancient traditions, this channeling was accomplished through initiations, vision quests, rites of passage, ceremonial ordeals that forced individuals to confront their fire and learn to work with it consciously. Modern society has largely abandoned these practices. We graduate high school and move out of our parents' houses, but we never truly initiate into conscious adulthood. The result is a culture of perpetual adolescence, people in adult bodies with adult responsibilities, but without adult consciousness, still seeking external validation, still avoiding discomfort, still waiting for permission to become who they truly are. The fire within them burns chaotically, creating drama and destruction rather than creation and contribution. But you can initiate yourself. You don't need permission from any authority. You don't need to wait for the perfect circumstances. You can choose right now to step into conscious relationship with your life force, to honor your passion by directing it wisely, to become the adult you've been waiting to become. This self-initiation requires creating your own practices, your own rituals, your own sacred commitments. Maybe it's a daily practice of creative expression. Maybe it's a weekly time of solitude and reflection. Maybe it's a monthly review where you assess whether your actions align with your values. The specific form matters less than the consistent commitment. What you're building is what the ancients called forging. You're taking raw, chaotic energy and hammering it into something useful, something beautiful, something that serves. This forging happens through repeated contact with heat, with challenge, with resistance. Each time you choose authentic expression over comfortable avoidance, you strengthen your container. Eventually, the container becomes strong enough to hold increasing amounts of energy. You can work with more passion, more creativity, more life force without burning out or acting out. Your capacity expands. What once would have overwhelmed you now flows through you with grace. This is sulfur mastery. But even purified passion needs guidance. Even clear channels need intelligent direction. Fire without wisdom is still dangerous. Desire without consciousness can still lead astray. This is why the third element is essential. Mercury, the master intelligence, the bridge between earth and heaven, the consciousness that observes, understands, and directs. Without Mercury, salt and sulfur remain separate, body and soul disconnected, foundation and fire unable to fully integrate. But when Mercury awakens, everything changes. The Trinity becomes whole, the alchemical marriage becomes possible, and you step into a completely different way of being human. Most people live entirely in salt, identified with their body, their physical circumstances, their material concerns. Some people discover sulfur and live from passion, but without grounding or wisdom. Very few discover Mercury, the third eye that sees beyond apparent reality, the witness consciousness that remains unmoved by changing conditions. Mercury is not cold or detached. It's not about disconnecting from life. Mercury is about simultaneously participating fully in life while recognizing that you are more than your participation. You can feel intense emotion while also witnessing the emotion. You can experience physical pain while also recognizing that you are the space in which pain arises. This might sound paradoxical. How can you be both the experience and the experiencer, both the content and the context? This is the mystery that Mercury reveals. You are not one-dimensional. You exist on multiple levels simultaneously. and accessing these deeper levels changes your relationship with everything. When you identify only with the physical body, with salt, you are vulnerable to every physical fluctuation, every ache, every symptom, every change becomes threatening. When you identify only with your passions, with sulfur, you are volatile, elated when things go your way, devastated when they don't. But when you rest in Mercury, in witness consciousness, you discover an unshakable stability that nothing external can disturb. This stability is not numbness. It's not spiritual bypassing or emotional suppression. It's the profound recognition that who you truly are transcends every temporary condition. Your body will age, your emotions will fluctuate, your circumstances will change, but the awareness that perceives all of this remains constant, unchanged, eternal. Accessing Mercury requires a specific practice, one so simple that most people overlook it, so accessible that it seems too ordinary to hold power. Yet this practice has been central to every contemplative tradition throughout history. It's the bridge between the human and the divine, the technology for awakening spirit. What is this universal key that unlocks Mercury and reveals your true nature? The gateway to Mercury, to spirit, to the consciousness that unifies everything, is closer than your next thought, more intimate than your heartbeat, so fundamental that you've been doing it your entire life without recognizing its power. This is the breath, the constant rhythm that connects you to life itself, the bridge between conscious and unconscious, the tool that can shift your entire state of being in moments. Most people breathe unconsciously, shallowly, reactively. Their breath pattern reflects their stress levels, their emotional state, their nervous system activation. When you're anxious, your breath becomes rapid and shallow. When you're relaxed, your breath deepens and slows. But here's what changes everything. This relationship works in both directions. Your emotional state affects your breath, and your breath affects your emotional state. When you consciously shift your breathing pattern, you directly influence your nervous system, your brain chemistry, your energetic field. This makes breath the most powerful tool for immediate transformation. You carry it with you always. It requires no equipment. It costs nothing. Yet it can create profound shifts. Ancient yogis understood this completely. They developed elaborate systems of breath control called pranayama. Prana means life force. Ayama means extension or control. Pranayama is the conscious regulation of your vital energy through breath. Different patterns create different effects. Some techniques energize, others calm. Some balance, others purify. Modern science is now validating what mystics have known for thousands of years. Controlled breathing directly influences the autonomic nervous system. It shifts you from sympathetic activation, fight or flight, to parasympathetic activation, rest and digest. This shift is measurable. Heart rate variability increases, blood pressure decreases, cortisol levels drop. Inflammation reduces, but the effects go beyond physical. Conscious breathing creates coherence. When your breath, heart, and brain synchronize their rhythms, you enter a state of optimal function. Decision-making improves, creativity enhances, intuition sharpens. You access inner resources that remain hidden during states of stress and fragmentation. This coherence is Mercury in action, spirit imposing order on matter, consciousness directing energy, the volatile element bringing the fixed and fluid elements into harmonious alignment. Without Mercury, salt and sulfur exist in potential conflict, body and soul pulling in different directions. But Mercury is the mediator, the translator, the force that creates unity from duality. Here's a simple practice that demonstrates Mercury's power. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, bring your attention to your breath without trying to change it. Simply observe. Notice the cool air entering your nostrils. Feel your chest and belly expand. Sense the warm air leaving your body. Watch the natural pause between breaths. After a few minutes of observation, begin to regulate the pattern. Inhale slowly for a count of 4. Hold gently for a count of 4. Exhale slowly for a count of 6. Hold empty for a count of 2. Repeat this cycle 10 times. Notice what happens. The simple act of conscious breathing shifts your entire state. Thoughts slow, emotions settle. You feel more present, more centered, more yourself. This is not imagination. This is direct manipulation of your physiology through consciousness. You are proving to yourself that spirit commands matter, that awareness can direct energy, that you are not a helpless victim of your body's reactions, but a conscious architect of your inner experience. When you make conscious breathing a regular practice, the effects compound. Your baseline stress level decreases, your capacity to handle challenges increases, your emotional reactivity diminishes. You develop what's called a witness perspective, the ability to observe your experience without being consumed by it. This witness perspective is the hallmark of Mercury activation. Most humans are completely identified with their experience. When they feel angry, they become anger. When they feel afraid, they become fear. There's no separation between the experiencer and the experience. But Mercury creates space, a gap between stimulus and response, between feeling and reacting. In that gap lives your power. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote about this profound truth. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. He discovered this in the most extreme circumstances imaginable. If it's true in a concentration camp, it's certainly true in your daily life. Mercury awakens this space. Conscious breathing is the practice that accesses it. But breathing is not the only technology for Mercury activation. Meditation, contemplation, prayer, all of these practices work with the same principle. They train your attention. They develop your capacity to observe without immediately reacting. They strengthen the witness. The witness is not cold or distant. The witness is warm, accepting, spacious. It allows everything to be exactly as it is, while simultaneously recognizing that you are more than what appears. You can witness pain without becoming pain. You can observe fear without becoming fear. You can notice thoughts without believing every thought is true. This capacity might be the most important skill you ever develop, because suffering is not usually caused by what happens. Suffering is caused by your relationship to what happens. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. The difference between the two is Mercury. Witness consciousness, the ability to hold experience with spaciousness rather than contraction. As Mercury activates and stabilizes through practice, something profound emerges, a new stage of the alchemical work. This is called citrinitas, the yellowing, the stage of wisdom, where knowledge transforms into knowing, where information becomes realization, where intellectual understanding becomes lived experience. Citrinitas represents the integration of mind and spirit. You're no longer just thinking about truth, you're experiencing truth directly. This is gnosis, unmediated knowing, the kind of certainty that cannot be shaken by doubt, because it's not based on belief, it's based on direct perception. In this stage, you begin to recognize patterns that were previously invisible. You see how everything connects, how your internal state creates your external experience, how consciousness precedes form, how changing your frequency changes your reality. This isn't theory anymore. This is your lived experience. You can no longer unsee what Mercury has revealed. Wisdom at this level brings both gifts and challenges. The gift is clarity. You stop wasting energy on what doesn't matter. You see through manipulation and illusion. You recognize truth with increasing precision. The challenge is that you simultaneously see how rare this clarity is, how most people remain asleep, how systems and institutions depend on that sleep. This can create a sense of isolation. When you wake up, you might find that many of your relationships were based on shared unconsciousness, shared complaints, shared distractions, shared numbness. As you wake up, those relationships naturally shift or dissolve, not because you're superior or judgmental, but because you're no longer vibrating at the same frequency. This is not a reason to avoid awakening, but it is something to prepare for. As Mercury activates, your life will reorganize around new priorities. Old connections might fade, New connections will emerge with people who share your commitment to consciousness. Trust this process. The relationships you lose were not meant for this version of you. The relationships that arrive will support your continued evolution. Citrinitas also brings what mystics call the dark night of the spirit. This is different from the dark night of the soul that characterizes Nigredo. The dark night of the soul is about dissolving the ego. The dark night of the spirit is about releasing attachment to spiritual experiences themselves. Here's what happens. As you progress on the path, you have experiences of expanded consciousness, moments of bliss, clarity, unity, transcendence. These experiences are beautiful, transformative, but they're also temporary. And if you become attached to them, if you start chasing them, they become another trap, another form of seeking that keeps you from resting in what you already are. The dark night of the spirit strips away this spiritual seeking. It shows you that even transcendent experiences are content arising in the field of awareness. Even enlightenment moments are phenomena appearing to the witness. At the deepest level, there's nothing to attain because you already are what you seek. But this recognition only comes after seeking has exhausted itself. This is paradoxical. You must seek to realize there's nothing to seek. You must practice to discover that what you're seeking cannot be found through practice. You must work toward awakening to realize that you've always been awake. The finger pointing at the moon must eventually be recognized as separate from the moon itself. Mercury in its highest expression is this recognition. You are not the thoughts appearing in consciousness. You are consciousness itself. You are not the emotions arising and passing. You are the space in which they move. You are not the body that was born and will die. You are the deathless awareness that animates the body. This might sound abstract, but it has practical implications. When you rest in this recognition, anxiety about the future diminishes. Why worry about what will happen to someone who doesn't ultimately exist? Why stress about protecting an identity that's just a collection of thoughts and memories? Why struggle to maintain control over experiences that are constantly changing regardless of your efforts? From the witness perspective, life becomes simpler. Not easier, but simpler. You still feel emotions, but you're not ruled by them. You still experience challenges, but you're not defined by them. You still participate in the world, but you're not enslaved to outcomes. You become like water, flowing around obstacles rather than fighting against them, adapting to conditions while maintaining essential nature. This fluid adaptability is Mercury's gift. Fixed salt creates stability. Volatile sulfur creates momentum, but Mercury creates responsiveness, the capacity to meet each moment fresh, without the burden of fixed patterns or rigid expectations. This responsiveness is what allows true healing, because healing is not returning to some previous state. Healing is becoming capable of meeting what is with openness rather than resistance. When salt, sulfur, and mercury all activate and begin working in harmony, you approach the final stage, the culmination of the alchemical work. This is called rubedo, the reddening, the great work completed, the marriage of opposites, the union of human and divine, heaven and earth meeting in your very being. But rubedo is not the end. It's the beginning of living from wholeness rather than seeking wholeness, the beginning of expressing your gifts rather than searching for your purpose, the beginning of being love rather than looking for love. Everything before rubedo is preparation. Rubedo itself is actualization. The three elements no longer exist as separate forces. Salt purified, sulfur directed, mercury awakened. Now they unite in the sacred marriage, the hieros gamos, the ultimate integration that ancient alchemists spent lifetimes pursuing. This is rubedo, the red work, the completion that is simultaneously a new beginning. Rubedo represents embodied awakening, not awakening as escape from the body, but awakening expressed through the body. You're not transcending your humanity, you're fulfilling it, realizing its highest potential, becoming fully human and fully divine in the same breath. This is what you were always meant to become. In this state, your body operates with intelligence you never accessed before. You listen to its signals, honor its needs, work with its wisdom rather than against it. Illness no longer feels like betrayal. Symptoms become messengers you learn to decode. You develop an intimate partnership with your physical form. Your passion flows cleanly, directed toward purposes that matter, no longer leaking into addictions or compulsions. Your creative energy expresses itself naturally. Whatever gifts you carry, you share them, not from obligation, but from overflow. You give because you're full, not because you're trying to fill yourself through giving. Your consciousness rests in spacious awareness. You engage fully with life while simultaneously witnessing from the space beyond life. You feel deeply while recognizing you are more than feeling. You think clearly while knowing you are more than thought. You exist in paradox, both human and divine, both nothing and everything, both particle and wave. This integrated state is what philosophers called the philosopher's stone. Not a physical substance that turns lead into gold, but a consciousness that transforms suffering into wisdom, that alchemizes pain into purpose, that converts every experience, no matter how difficult, into fuel for evolution. You become unbreakable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because you know how to metabolize everything that happens. When you live from rubedo, healing becomes continuous, not because you never experience imbalance, but because you correct quickly. You notice when you're slipping into old patterns. You catch yourself before minor misalignments become major crises. You maintain equilibrium through constant, subtle adjustments rather than dramatic interventions. This is true sovereignty, not control over external circumstances, but mastery over internal responses. The freedom that comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you have the capacity to work with it, to transform it, to extract meaning from it. This is what the ancient teachings were always pointing toward. Not invincibility, but adaptability. Not perfection, but wholeness. The three forbidden elements are not really forbidden. They're forgotten, hidden in plain sight, dismissed as too simple to hold real power. Your body, your passion, your awareness, salt, sulfur, mercury. When purified and integrated, they become the trinity of complete healing, the foundation of sovereign vitality. You don't need pharmaceutical interventions to access this. You don't need years of therapy or expensive treatments. Though those things can support the process, they're not the process itself. The process is internal, alchemical, available to anyone willing to do the work. And make no mistake, it is work, not casual interest or weekend workshop transformation. Deep, sustained commitment to your own becoming, the willingness to face darkness without guarantee of light, the courage to release everything familiar in service of something authentic, the discipline to practice even when you don't feel like it. But this work returns dividends beyond measure. Imagine waking up in a body that feels vital instead of burdened, moving through your day with clear purpose instead of vague dissatisfaction, experiencing emotions fully without being controlled by them, facing challenges with curiosity instead of fear. This is not fantasy. This is the natural result of alchemical integration. The world needs people who have done this work, who have descended into their darkness and emerged with light, who have purified their salt, forged their sulfur, and awakened their mercury, who live from wholeness rather than seeking wholeness. Because people who have healed themselves naturally help others heal simply by being present. Your transformation creates permission for others to transform. Your sovereignty reminds others of their own power. Your wholeness reflects back their hidden potential. This is not egotistical. This is service. The greatest gift you can give the world is becoming fully yourself, healing completely, living authentically. Right now, you stand at a threshold. Behind you, the familiar patterns, the comfortable suffering, the slow death of living unconsciously. Before you, the unknown, the challenge of awakening, the exhilaration of authentic life. You cannot stand in the doorway forever. Eventually, you must choose. If something in these words resonated, if something deeper recognized truth here, then you know what to do. The three elements are already within you. They're not missing. They're dormant, waiting for your attention, your intention, your commitment to activating them fully. Start with salt. Purify your vessel. Create ritual around releasing what no longer serves. Take actual salt baths with intention. Sit in the discomfort of facing your shadow. Allow the dissolution without rushing to reconstruction. Trust that this darkness is preparing you for light. Then work with sulfur. Reconnect with authentic passion. Ask yourself what would make you feel truly alive. What pulls you forward with sense of rightness? What would you do even if no one paid you, praised you, or noticed? That's your sulfur calling. Answer it. Direct your fire toward purposes that matter. Finally, activate Mercury. Practice conscious breathing daily. Develop witness consciousness through meditation. Create space between stimulus and response. Recognize that you are the awareness in which all experience arises. Rest in that recognition more and more frequently until it becomes your primary identity. These 3 practices, sustained over time, will change everything. Not overnight, not without difficulty, but certainly, inevitably, because you're working with the fundamental forces that govern healing, transformation, and evolution. You're aligning with natural law rather than fighting against it. The ancient masters encoded this knowledge in symbols and stories because direct teaching would have been destroyed. They hid it in plain sight, trusting that those ready to receive it would recognize its value. You're here now, reading these words. Something in you recognized, something in you knows this is your path. The quantum field responds to intention. When you declare yourself ready, when you commit to the journey, resources appear, synchronicities increase, the right teachers show up. The necessary circumstances arrange themselves. This isn't magical thinking. This is how consciousness interacts with probability. Your clear intention collapses wave functions in ways that support your evolution. So declare it now, not just to me, but to yourself, to the universe, to the quantum field that's listening. Write in the comments, I activate the alchemist within. This is not just engagement. This is energetic transmission. You're sending a signal that you're ready, that you're committed, that you're stepping into your power. If this message resonated deeply, if you feel called to continue this journey, then subscribe to this channel, not just to receive notifications, but to stay aligned with this frequency, to surround yourself with reflections of consciousness rather than unconsciousness, to build momentum through repeated exposure to truth. Leave a comment below sharing one word that captures the transformation you're choosing. Just one word. Let that word be your anchor, your reminder, your declaration to the field. Whether it's freedom, power, truth, wholeness, awakening, or something entirely personal, name it, claim it, make it real through declaration. Share this message with someone who's ready. You know who they are. The person who's been seeking but hasn't found, who's been suffering but doesn't know why, who's ready for something different but doesn't know what. Send them this transmission, not to fix them, but to offer possibility, to plant a seed that might bloom when the timing is right. The work continues beyond this video. I've prepared additional transmissions that go deeper into specific practices that show you exactly how to apply these principles in daily life, that support your continued evolution. The next video is waiting for you. Click it now. Let's go deeper together. Remember, you are not broken. You never were. You are an alchemist who forgot your training, a sovereign being who accepted limitation, a divine spark that believed it was only flesh. The 3 elements within you are stirring, awakening, ready to unite in sacred marriage. Your healing is not something that happens to you. It's something you choose, something you activate, something you become. The power has always lived within. You're simply remembering how to access it, how to direct it, how to embody it fully. The journey from unconsciousness to awakening is the hero's journey, the call to adventure, the descent into darkness, the trials and revelations, the return with gifts for the community. You've been called, you've begun the descent, the trials await, but so do the gifts, the complete vitality, the sovereign health, the embodied wholeness. This is your time, your moment, your quantum leap. Everything before this was preparation. Everything after this is actualization. Stand at this threshold with full awareness, with complete commitment. with absolute trust that you carry within you everything needed for total transformation. The 3 forbidden elements of Thoth are no longer forbidden to you. You've been given the keys: salt, sulfur, Mercury, body, soul,